Well, first we want to talk about the African American community and voter suppression. Voter suppression is probably the #1 threat to democracy that exists right now. Democracy entails that we take input from the people, so that the people are actually the ones governing themselves. Now, when you take one's right to vote, at that point they're being dictated to more than they're inputting as to exactly what's going on in their society. In the state of Florida, there was a case known as the Madison 9. After the new governor, Rick Scott, took place in office, he implemented a lot of new voter registration laws, including where you can register to vote, who can register people to vote, things like this. Now, when these laws were in their infancy, of course, a lot of people weren't privy as to the details of them. In Madison County, a very small rural county, a group of deaconesses from the church were doing a voter registration drive. They were helping people that were out of town and they're elderly do absentee ballots and provisional ballots. Long story short, the FBI and FDLE kicks their door in and arrest them at gunpoint, all because they broke Rick Scott's voter registration laws. And this is voter suppression, even though they didn't technically go and take ballots out of anyone's hands and say, okay, you can't vote. People that heard about that event were afraid to register more people to vote. People in that community didn't want to be within 10 yards of a voter registration form because of what was done to the Madison 9. They were a large group of African Americans, and right now I think they're still in a legal battle right now. But that just goes to show that politically and strategically, there are individuals in this country that want to suppress the vote in order to gain political power, instead of letting the will of the people prevail. Now, I work with Black Youth Vote. We're an initiative of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, and I recently moved here to be the national coordinator for this initiative. And what we do is we go to different communities. We have a lot of state affiliates in about 15 states. And what we do is we do trainings, and we try to encourage them into getting involved in the process in their own neighborhoods, with the hope that this collectively will bring about an impact that's positive for us. We key in on the demographic 18-year-olds through 35-year-olds. And in the last couple elections, young African Americans were the fastest growing voting population in the country. So the voter suppression laws weren't as racial as they were strategic and political. And yes, one single group may have been targeted more than another group. However, it was more strategic and political because you have to look at the timing. 2010, 2 years after the first African American president was elected. And now here comes all of these voter registration laws. And when it comes to Barack Obama, we're a 501c3. So we don't really have an opinion as to how well he's doing as a president. However, as an organizer, he was pretty brilliant and really bringing to the forefront of canvassing and organizing technology and being able to revolutionize what it means to register to vote. There's another event we have in Florida that's very, very popular in the African American community. It's known as Souls to the Polls. This is basically when, right after church, instead of going home, everyone loads up on buses and they go vote. A lot of times, people would be first-time voters and they would register to vote on site. The state of Florida has taken that away. And a lot of other states, they're attacking Souls to the Polls too. Of course, they're trying to cut down on early voting days. They're making it harder to register to vote within 30 days of the election. In the state of Florida now, you have to be a registered third-party registrant to register voters. If your grandma is 80 years old and doesn't drive and can't take her voter registration card, or she can't go vote, you legally can't go take her voter registration form to the supervisor of elections office for her. That's illegal. Even if I am, and we are a third-party registrant in the state of Florida, if I don't take the voter registration forms back to the supervisor of elections within 48 hours, I could technically be charged with a misdemeanor. 10 days? Is it 10 days now? Okay. Well, wow. That's a little better. Did they change the misdemeanor part too?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, yeah. So it's pretty tough. Like in the last election in 2012, because I've been in D.C. for a minute, it was 48 hours. And on our campus, being at HBCU, Florida A&M University, there was a lot of interest in voter registration. And sometimes we would set up our voter registration booths right in the middle of campus. And we would have DJs who, give away snacks and things like that. Needless to say, we would end up with thousands of voter registration cards. And it's very difficult to process that many voter registration cards in just a few short days. This is more voter suppression. So when it comes to the question, what's at stake for the African American community? Everything. Because we all know that in 1964, there was the Voting Rights Act, right? That was the quintessential element that helped cut down the tree of segregation, if you will. JFK said himself, how can African Americans feel that they are giving their children a good education? They can't even vote for the elected officials that are controlling their schools. So it's not even just at a national level, at a local level. Votes are being suppressed so they can control communities so that change can't trickle down from the top. And they're there to brake pad any type of change that would trickle down through voter registration. So historically, we've been through a lot, just like the women's movement when it comes to equal rights. But voter registration and voting is the quintessential element of liberation. And without the right to vote, and with being intimidated in voting, then essentially you're telling a group of people that we don't want your input in this country. And that's not right. Because even if it's just sales taxes, even if you're unemployed, you're still paying taxes. You're still contributing some type of way to this country as a citizen. So your vote should be taken into account. I feel that one thing that we can do is support the new VRA amendment, the Voting Rights Amendment, that's being processed right now in the House. The Voting Rights Act, Section 3 and 4, was struck down by the Supreme Court a few months ago, several months ago. So right now there is legislation on the table to basically circumvent what was done by the Supreme Court. So I feel that we all should support this legislation and make it to where that when states make changes to their voter registration laws, like in North Carolina, like in New Mexico, and all these various places, if there is a trend of disproportionate voters from any particular group, the Attorney General and whoever he designates under him should be able to implement themselves in that process and say, okay, here you have to check in with us before you make a new voter ID law. And right now, they're basically going unchecked. That's why they're, ramming all this stuff down the pipeline right now, because Section, 4 and 5 at one point was there to protect us from these type of voter imposition laws. And without that, we don't have that protection. So that has to be our main objective, is making sure that the Voting Rights Amendment Act gets through the House and to the Senate so that we can see some real change in our communities.
Okay. Danny?